Hi, welcome. This is Alex Vitkin. I'm here with Jamie. Jamie runs a tech agency. Tell us, Jamie, what do you do and how long you've been a member of BMI?
Yeah, so I run an agency that does Webflow development only. So we don't do any design services. We just basically take clients' Figma files and convert them into Webflow. I've been in BMI, I guess, about a year and a half now, probably. Started my agency maybe just like a month before I joined.
What happens now? Like, why are we doing this call? What's the news that prompted this?
I think it's because I'm making money now, right?
I mean,
30
you
to
were making money for a
40K
while,
a
but
month.
how successful are you? Like, are you successful now?
Yeah, I think when we originally talked, my 10-year money goal was like to make 200K a year or something. And we're at about revenue wise, like 30 to 40K a month right now. I think last month was 38 and profit was like 24. I'm leaving a lot of that in the business just to help grow. But if I was paying all of that to myself, then I would have already hit my 10-year target.
Interesting. There you go. 10-year target, year and a half in. Did you have success before BMI or is this newly minted success now?
I came out of nowhere. So before COVID, I worked in the music industry. I was an assistant. So I was just somebody's bitch, honestly. I don't know if I'd say that on YouTube, but
No, whatever.
yeah, I was an assistant and then I taught myself some development. So I was freelancing for a little bit before BMI, but nothing near what I'm doing now.
Wow, that's quite a rise to success from an assistant essentially all the way to business owner in a year and a half. What type of stuff did you learn in BMI that allowed you to build the agency?
I think like the biggest thing that I credit BMI to is systematized lead gen and just like operations. But I think like at the ground floor to get me started, like understanding that I need to be consistently sending proposals and doing outreach and not like waiting on work to come in and not like pausing when I get busy and that kind of thing. And like understanding how to track that and see like where I can improve and where I can optimize funnels is something that when I talk to agency owners outside of BMI, they like that's like a foreign concept to them. They're just like, yeah, we just like get work. It just like lands in our inbox, but like sometimes it dries up. And I'm like, what's
They
like
should
your
probably
funnel?
be
How do you
talking to me
track
soon.
it?
If they're running an agency successfully, they don't even have this. They should definitely be talking to us very soon because they need. But anyway, so you've learned systemization, you've learned lead gen, and anything else?
Yeah, overall, like just like operations stuff and hiring. Like I think at each level, because I was a freelancer before, so I learned to delegate things through talking to people at BMI and making my first hires. So each time I'm reaching a new level in my business, I'm able to like go to a call with someone who just got through that level. Like my favorite thing about BMI is I go to Lucas's calls a lot. And when I first got in, I think Lucas was at around 30K a month and he had been in BMI for a year. And I was like, I just want to get where that guy is. And so I went to his calls. He helped me a ton. I'm now where he was when I started. And I think he's at 50K a month or so now. And I'm trying to get there. And I'm talking to him now about what the next steps are.
And it's funny because you were selling
it.
like a quote unquote newer service when you joined. We had you recommended that you sell a new quote unquote newer service, it's less competitive. And now he's selling the same service. You guys are actually in the same industry now.
Yeah, so it's very cool to also have other people like in Webflow who know the actual industry. Because especially with Lucas, like I think he was also a developer beforehand. So sometimes we talk a little bit about like the technical stuff and figuring out like the best services we can offer to clients.
Interesting. And so you've learned those things. Maybe you learned sales as well, I assume, right?
Yeah, totally. Like the overall approach I was pretty decent at sales beforehand. So like when I was an assistant before, it was at an agency, which is a music industry version of sales.
Oh, right.
So I had some sales experience, but it was all my sales calls had no structure. And so really I was good at building rapport, but if I happened to whiff that part at the beginning of the sales call, like the structure afterwards was just up in the air. So with BMI having like more of a structure, like my best sales calls with my target clients have been agencies. So like we focus a lot on partnering with other agencies and being their development team. And when I ask them like all the questions like what do you currently do for development and just get them on a rant about how much they hate their current development team they currently do, like they do the sales work for me and then I'll have to say yeah, we fixed that problem and they're like wow. So yeah, sales has definitely been like a huge part of it and being able to like track like where in my sales process things are falling off has been a huge help.
Interesting. So you had sales experience, but it was unstructured. It was like the rapport sales process, meaning lots of talking with probably lower close rate. So you went from that to tracking and improving the sales process so that you have a higher close rate, more efficient sales process, along with the other stuff. So you basically went from freelancer to business owner, you can say. All right, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I also think that the process I had before, like it wasn't a process, it wasn't going to be teachable to anyone. It was just I would get on the call and talk to people. And I'm looking into my next steps as I get operations more stable and everything, like wanting to get a salesperson. I'll actually have a sales process that I can train someone on, as opposed to just hop on this call and be friends with this person and then they'll hire us.
Be friends. That's funny. How the tables have turned, or turned tables, whatever. So with regards to your life then, so how has your life changed since you started the agency? So went from freelancing to agency. How did your life change? If at all,
So
maybe it hasn't changed.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but before I joined BMI, I was living on about $1,000 a month. And so I basically lost my job and had like 6 months to live on unemployment and had just my like expenses in Nashville as low as they could possibly go. And I was like, if I can freelance and make $1,000 a month, I can survive. And then 6 months later, from like within a couple months from joining BMI, I was already doing about 15K a month. And so I was able to travel. Like I went to Mexico and Ecuador for about 6 months. I traveled around the US this past year, but then just a month ago, I actually moved into a 3-bedroom. We didn't buy it, but we're renting a 3-bedroom house in Denver, which is way more like my rent now is almost, it's $2,600 just rent. And so just like the standard of living, like I used to never be able to go out to eat, stuff like that. And now I don't really worry about money at all. And I can actually consider buying a house sometime.
Oh yeah, and you started during COVID as well, I think. I remember something like that.
Yeah, I think COVID was still happening. So I started a little bit after I like lost my job I had before COVID.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Good thing you took the risk. That because there was a financial risk. You only didn't have an income essentially. Low, at least you had low cost of living. That was a good thing. Looking back at it probably felt risky, right?
Yeah, to an extent. I had like a decent base of freelance clients that I knew I could make that very low cost of living and I could build my agency off of those. I was able to convert those freelance clients.
Oh, did that? So we basically we must have told you. I don't remember, of course. We must have told you. Let's just take anyone you have, turn into clients, and let's do lead gen now. That's probably something like that, right?
Yeah, and like at the time, I think BMI has a really good pulse on what like industries are coming up and stuff, and like
Yep.
Webflow was like exploding. Once you guys showed me how to do Upwork, I could hop on Upwork for 2 days and get a month's worth of work. Like even right at the start, barely any case studies.
Okay, for anyone listening to this is the first time talking about this. So the next big thing that's popping up right now, and it's not really popping, it's more of a slow progression over the last few years that's really increasing, is AI. Like I just talked to a guy who works at Google Brain and he's like a researcher, PhD, like top level, one of the top level guys, 4 levels below the CEO or something like that. He's joining BMI and we're gonna figure out how to basically package that up as a service, right? So that's gonna be the next big but slower thing, not as exciting as Webflow for most people. But imagine that, that's like everything, because AI is applicable to 15 different things just off the top of my head. So
right before this, I was looking at this like AI that just came out where you can type in like, write me a JavaScript script that does this, and it does it.
He says stuff like that is relatively easy as well. He says stuff like what you just said, and also language recognition is and like writing text. You don't even need that many lines of text to teach those tools to perform actions like that anymore, which is crazy because it already has learned from other almost infinite lines in the past. Because now they have all the practice under the belt already, so now they can implement that into multiple industries. So maybe you joined when Webflow was a new thing, and it's still good. A couple of weeks ago, people joined. Some of them already have sales in Webflow, so it's still beginner friendly. But for more advanced people that are going to join the next half year, maybe it's going to be stuff like AI. Blockchain last year was like a bubble. Obviously, you've seen those guys
made a lot of money off of it.
How did you prevent yourself from doing blockchain? How did you like say no? I'm going to stick to Webflow. When you saw an 18-year-old making 1.5 million, how did you prevent yourself from doing it?
I can't tell you how much I ranted about how much, because me and him joined on the same week. We had the same kickoff call where you were like, hey, maybe you should do blockchain stuff. like to him, and I was like, that's a really good idea. I think that's gonna go really well. And now he's a freaking kid making over $1 million a year, like, or however often, I don't know.
Yeah,
I was very tempted to get into it.
but he
Like,
was already in the industry. It was
that's the
difficult.
thing. I had no
Yeah.
knowledge of it, and I strongly believe in the future of no code tools and specifically Webflow. And so I think I felt confident as a long-term bet, and a little more nervous about the blockchain space. But watching everyone who did it make a ton of money as soon as they joined was just insane.
Well, your self-control is admirable, but it's not as easy anymore. Of course, still viable. It's not easy. But what were your objections? So before you joined, because again, you had a relatively complicated situation. So what were your objections? What did you think could have stopped you from joining, and how did you overcome that back then?
I think I knew I didn't have a ton of objections. If you remember, I just pretty much came to you and was like, I want to join, tell me the price. But I think that I had a good sense of, I could see that BMI had worked with a ton of people in my exact tech agencies, and that I love the structure of everything. Because I was also looking at people where it's, you get this one coach and this one coach, and they were like working with hundreds of students, and it's like, how much, like, what do they know about my business and what do they know about everything? The cool thing about BMI is everything is constantly changing in like tech and like the agency world and in like the different lead funnels. And the way that it's more of a community of people that can test things and bring together, here's what we've all found about like the current, what's going on with the Upwork algorithm, or like the latest LinkedIn rules, or what industries are like popping off right now. That was the thing that drew me to BMI over just like paying one like business coach who has like 100 other people to worry about and doesn't actually know much about my specific business.
I did what those guys are doing in 2014 for a few weeks, and it's insane. Like, you have to be a maniac to do that. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, to do it, I feel like you'd have to be like a superhero. Like, most of them, I would assume, just
We had 16 people at max for me at one point. Again, only for a few weeks before we switched to what it is now, pretty much. And that does not work. Like, I changed it immediately after 3 weeks because it doesn't work. Obviously, it paid a lot, but it didn't work for like maybe 1 out of 10 people got results, which is in BMI, it's like more like 8, 9 out of 10. Existing business owner and freelancer is like almost 10 out of 10. So yeah, to achieve those high results, just one person doing 100, teaching 100 people, it's just doesn't work. If it did, great, but it just doesn't work. And like, the only way to make it work is to make it so cookie cutter, so similar. Everyone does exactly the same thing, that at a certain point it just won't work for everyone because too many people are doing exactly the same thing, right? There's not infinite space for that. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I think really the only, obviously, like I thought about the money, but I mean, it paid itself back in less than a month for me. I think I had a lot of luck because I hopped into Webflow like the perfect time and had some experience as a freelancer. But
You started at the right time because you didn't mess around, you didn't procrastinate, you just pulled the trigger, which of course increases your odds of being on time.
yeah, for sure.
So it wasn't just luck, it was also like not messing about it or wasting another 4 months thinking about what happens post COVID or whatever people were thinking about back then. So doing the thing that makes sense quickly caused you not to waste time, which is, as you may have noticed, much better in business than messing around and waiting around forever, right? So now you're seeing people who join later doing the same thing, and it's still viable, but it's more difficult. For example, Webflow, but new things are popping up all the time. So that's normal. That's what happens in business. We thankfully have hundreds of people keeping track of that. But sorry, so anything else that you may have had as an objection back then?
I don't think so. I think I was mostly like, the main thing is just like looking at like the financial investment and being like, is this going to pay itself back? And I think that I knew if I just went all in on it and I was like, if I work at this full time, at least 8 hours a day, I would be hard not to make money off of it. But if I also have a group like this guiding me who's done it before, I spent a lot of time just watching all the video testimonials and just being like, all these are real people really making this much money. And you get into the group and you're instantly like, yep, they're real. I can talk to them every week and ask them questions about how they got here.
Imagine you join and none of them are there and we're like, I don't know. That'll be awesome.
But yeah, it was just like, because a lot of like other coaches will say, yeah, we've taken clients from like this to this, but I think like the video proof helped me a lot, and like instantly getting into the group and like
Oh wow, you were stalking us, huh? Okay,
I would,
interesting.
yeah, of course. But to me, it made it an easy decision. I was like, if all of these people have joined this group and done this, and I know that I'm willing to put the work in, and it felt like guaranteed. And once I got into the group and just started doing the work, like the results showed.
And who do you think should versus shouldn't join BMI? Because you've been on calls, who should be on the calls with you? Whose questions do you want to hear versus whose questions you don't want to hear?
Yeah, I think that you have to be willing to put in the work. BMI isn't a group that's just going to hand you like an absolute step by step. You have to do the work, but and be able to take feedback. I think that was one of the things getting
Mm.
into BMI is like you really have to be able to go to the calls and talk about your situation and be willing to be told like you're doing this completely wrong and you need to change it, which sometimes is hard to hear, but is like all of the most valuable advice I've gotten from BMI has been like getting on a call and being like, you're doing this wrong, do this instead.
Just join multiple calls so we can be told you're wrong at every single point. Perfect. All right.
That's the thing is I think I'm still wrong on half of what I'm doing, but I'm fixing things over time and growing as I'm doing it. And I think BMI also helps, but you don't want to be like, I think in the past I'd had trouble being an overthinker and an over strategizer when it came to business.
Typical developer. Yes, yes.
Yeah, instead of a doer. And so I think BMI helped me a lot into getting out of that habit and just being like, don't sit there and think about the copy on your Upwork proposal for a month. Write it and start sending it and update it as you go. I don't think it's that you don't want to join if you're an overthinker. I think that if you are an overthinker and you join, you just need to quickly understand.
Yeah, just be ready to change fast.
You need to be a doer and you can change things over time.
By the way, almost every developer has this problem.
You told me on our initial call about me joining, you told me exactly where I was going to get stuck. You were like, you're a developer and you're going to get stuck right here when you try to start like outsourcing absolutely everything and getting out of projects. And that is where I got stuck for a minute.
That's interesting when that happens. But learns this is basically every developer has to learn this, no matter what we say, and we can say this on every single call. We'll still have to learn this, but it's normal. You get over it as quickly as possible. Hopefully, for not longer than a month, you have this problem. Then you switch to doing what works to get back on track better. And then you learn the other lessons faster because you're not trying to be too clever. And then you go from there. Yeah, that's typical. That's normal. Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess I have no other questions. Do you have any other input for people who are watching this? Hey, what should I do here? I'm on this website. Who are these people? What should I even apply to talk to Alex? What would you tell them? Any last words?
Definitely talk to Alex, at least. I think BMI is totally, I credit it with changing my life. And it's been amazing. And it's been very cool. Like I have actually watched this work for basically that I joined with at the same week that I joined. And I actually haven't really watched the process fail for anyone, which has been crazy. It's like even people who maybe have bumps at the start. Like I remember I joined a little bit after another guy who joined. So he like at the time was having a little trouble getting started. He now makes like 100K a month.
Really? Who's that again?
Tim.
Oh, Tim. Oh, yeah, you joined. Yeah, he joined.
I think I joined about 6 months after him, but he was having a lot of trouble at the start, but now he's just like absolutely crushing it. And he just showed up. I remember when I started, like he was showing up to every call fully engaged. And
yeah, I remember that. He actually even had issues because he joined in the summer, I think, right? Yeah. And he had issues in the fall. He had issues, but then almost immediately after, he was at 20K and then 40 and eventually 100. Now that's the latest I've heard, but that's a process that took several months. But anyway, cool. So thanks. That's really valuable. And you're stalking a lot of people. That's interesting. Tim, I'm making a list. Tim, Luca.
I'm not like the most like vocal in the group, but I'm always there.
Interesting. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Cool. Well, thank you very much. I'll see you in the calls. Obviously, everyone who's watching this, if this is appealing to you, go to businessmentor.com and book the damn call, and we'll see what happens. Of course. Thank you very much, Jamie. See you soon. Bye bye.